Hey guys, Marcel, Irnieracing News. Feeling a little concerned by the news over the last 2 days about the depleted uranium bombs, missiles, weapons, essentially anti-tank weapons. With the depleted uranium, how it works is under high impact, it creates a massive amount of heat on impact in a certain amount of Kelvin that causes the uranium, the depleted uranium, to then burn, melt, and sharpen its way through metal, entering tanks and becoming essentially tank busters. The depleted uranium literally, such a high Kelvin, it can pierce through metal and it becomes sharper and sharper as it goes through. Okay, so that's the quick summary of that. So who sent these weapons to Ukraine? The UK. They are sending nuclear armed, armor-piercing weapons with nuclear component to Ukraine. And of course, this is the escalation, again, another escalation towards nuclear war between Russia, the USA, or Russia and the G5 countries, or the G7 countries, the G7 bitches, guys, that are ruining the world for everybody, for their own political narrative, their political control measures.
Сегодня стало известно, что Великобритания устами заместителя главы Министерства обороны этой страны объявила не только о поставках танков на Украину, но и снарядов с объединенным ураном. Похоже, что Запад действительно решил воевать с Россией до последнего украинца уже не на словах, а на деле. Но хотел бы в этой связи отметить, что если все это будет происходить, то соответствующим образом Россия вынуждена будет реагировать, имея в виду, что коллективный Запад начинает применять уже оружие с ядерным компонентом.
Their Agenda 2030s, their Agenda 2050s, etc. And this puts us, the citizens, in a very, very difficult position, watching from as a bystander, as nuclear war, as the Terminator unfolds in front of us, guys.
A protest has erupted in the UK against sending depleted uranium ammunition to Ukraine. The hugely controversial move has led to a rally outside Downing Street in protest against the British government's decision to supply Kyiv with the radioactive weapons.
Guys, Skynet is here. In reality, whoever thought we'd be watching Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 with Skynet, and now not only do we have AI, Elon Musk warning we need some kind of regulatory body to control AI, because essentially we need to shut down Skynet, and then Skynet then says, well, now you're threatening me as the machine, you're threatening me as Skynet, and so now you humans have become my enemy. And before all this, or on top of that, nuclear war. I urge everyone to go and research Bikini Islands as one example. And Chernobyl, and to understand what nuclear fallout, nuclear radiation, what uranium can do to humans and the land, ruin the land for hundreds and hundreds of years. You would literally, when you have nuclear fallout from, say, Chernobyl, the nuclear power plant blowing up, or you have the Bikini Islands where the US tested atomic bombs and had the people as guinea pigs to see how long they live before they die of cancers from the uranium, from the radiation poisoning. And they literally told them, okay, you can go back to Bikini Island, it's safe now. And they all go back and they all die within 5 years, typically. There is a documentary that Romeo pointed me to, The Coming War of China, or Coming War of China, I think that was it. You can go find it on the streaming services. I could even find a link and post it in the description, which I will do for you guys, okay? So we have some serious times, guys. So the UK is sending missiles with a depleted uranium component. Putin is saying, you guys are escalating this to a nuclear point that I need to retaliate at some point too. You're pushing the thin red line further and further. So let's go and cut to footage of then Putin. He knows where these missiles were stored in Ukraine. I mean, they're so obviously the Ukrainian setup is just terrible. Putin has such an advantage over this whole thing. And, you know, the offensive that keeps coming and, oh, it's winter. No, we can't do winter. No, it's too cold. Oh, spring, it's too muddy. Oh, summer, it's too hot. There is no, the U.S. and the G7 countries are going to push it until the last Ukrainian. Get that through your head. The last Ukrainian, guys. And then everybody else, we're all going to feel the radiation fallout possibly, and so on and so forth. So Putin blew up this missile depot, the storage of these depleted uranium armor-piercing missiles, because it's a lot safer to blow up the uranium with, a bomb, because apparently the uranium will not reach a certain Kelvin to cause issue with uranium, with radiation poisoning in the air and the soil and everybody around it. Maybe a little bit or a certain degree. We're going to talk about that. But essentially, there's a certain Kelvin that must be reached for the uranium to work. And that Kelvin is reached at high velocity impact. But by blowing things up with dynamite or whatever explosion from a missile, it doesn't reach the Kelvin. It just vaporizes the stuff. It doesn't have the energy stored to activate the depleted uranium. So let's go watch the footage of blowing up this area. And we have somebody posted a graph on Telegram suggesting that there is heightened levels of radiation. But if you guys go and watch the documentary on Chernobyl, I think it was on Crave, you'll understand what low levels are and what high levels are. Imagine you having 1,000 x-rays on your body per second. I mean, we're talking real serious stuff when it gets into the 500, the 1,000, in terms of how they measure radiation. Check it out.
We've organized an emergency protest against sending depleted uranium shells to Ukraine. We've done our best to communicate our protest to as wide an audience as possible, including newspapers like the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Mail, the Sunday Times, and various other newspapers. The activists who are here today have been protesting for 9 years, since the coup in 2014 in Ukraine, asking for the British government to end its support for what we regarded even back then as an illegal regime. Britain has given billions in aid and military aid and economic aid to Ukraine at a time when the energy prices here have gone sky high. People are struggling. A lot of people are aware of the truth in Ukraine, which is quite amazing when you consider that the reporting here is totally and utterly one-sided. They recycle the stories from American intelligence, British intelligence. The Ukrainian regime lies.
This is not the first time that the UK and its ally, the US, have raised concerns with the use of controversial weapons. During the first Gulf War, the countries used hundreds of tons of the radioactive substance, and during the second war in Iraq in 2003, up to 2,000 tons were employed during only a 3-week period. Another striking example was NATO's bombing of Yugoslavia in 1999, with the consequences of depleted uranium usage still being felt today.
Okay, I'm going to translate a Russian article about the radiation from Ukraine from British depleted uranium shells that are now, moving through and covering Poland and Moldova in terms of the blow up fallout. Okay, The Polish university named after Maria Curie published environmental monitoring data on May 15th. Sensors recorded a sharp jump in the level of bismuth pollution 6 to 7 times, as we also can see in that graph. More alarm bells rang in Moldova. Their residents of the northeastern part of the country began to complain of headaches, dizziness, and general condition worsened. And all this exactly after the explosion of the military depots near Ternopil and Khmelnytskyi, where probably depleted uranium shells were stored for tanks, which the UK supplied to Ukraine. Again, you got to understand, it's the UK and the USA started this. Don't forget that. We can't all blame Russia for this radiation poisoning. They're the ones that instigated the radiation, the nuclear fallout, the nuclear war essentially coming. They're the ones sending these weapons because they know it's going to turn bad. Whether they're shot off and the uranium and the radiation is spread out across Russia and Ukraine, or it's going to be blown up in one fell swoop as the Russians did, which my common sense would say that would be better in limiting the radiation fallout in one spot, blowing them up at a low Kelvin versus the high-speed Kelvin impact spread across war zones, right? So anyways, this is just some opinions. We all don't know. And all this exactly after the explosion. Okay, fires in these warehouses were extinguished by robots, not ordinary rescuers. As opposed to Chernobyl, if you've watched the documentary, send in the fire trucks, send in everybody. They have no clue. Radiation levels jumped for a while. Train traffic was stopped. The Ukrainian authorities continued to deny that there was nothing of the kind. No uranium, neither depleted nor otherwise. But people began to notice the dosimetrists appear where they once did not exist. Maybe that's a translation problem. Dosimetrists, I don't know. Then they ran in masses to pharmacies for vitamins with iodine, of course. And after watching the documentary on Chernobyl, everyone, you need iodine. It's the only thing that'll help with radiation poisoning. And the Poles write that the radiation threat came from the Khmelnytskyi region. Now, bismuth, an increase in concentration of which was recorded in Lublin, Poland, is a half-life product of depleted uranium. For a long time, it was considered non-radioactive, but more recently, in 2003, scientists discovered its alpha decay, albeit extremely slow. Its half-life is 1.9 plus minus 0.2, 1,019 years, whatever that means. That's 9 orders of magnitude more than the age of the universe. What the? Okay, 1.9 plus, yeah. That is 1 billion times. In other words, the land contaminated with bismuth will never be cleansed by itself. You have to dig up all the land, guys, remove all the soil, just like in Chernobyl. You will have to at least remove a layer of soil. And now, not only residents of Ukraine, but also Poland have faced this. From Ternopil to Lublin, 300 kilometers in a straight line to the northwest. To Moldova, the same, only to the south. The warehouses were liquidated on the morning of May 13th, the jump in the level of bismuth on May 15th. Could a cloud of radioactive metal cover such a distance during this time? And in general, in which direction did the wind blow? We asked retired Lieutenant Colonel military meteorologist Yevgeny Tiskofit about this. On May 15th, in his Telegram channel, the Sentinel Weather, he published a map of the distribution of particles in the entire thickness of the atmosphere, or the troposphere. Okay, so at the time of the missile strikes on the warehouses, the aerosonautic situation was determined by the front of the cyclone, says Tiskovets. And what is the front of the cyclone? This is a barometric, the baric top that spins counterclockwise. And it was Western Ukraine that found itself at the forefront of the whirlwind. That is, the wind blew from the southeast to the northwest. Lublin, where the bismuth content increased by 6 or 7 times was found, is located just in the northwest of Ternopil and Khmelnytskyi. If you look at the map where the trajectories of particles every 3 hours, you can clearly see the radioactive particles could spread to the Khmelnytskyi, Ternopil, Revner, Voyn, Livy, Lyotom regions. Sorry, I'm going to just destroy these words. That's okay, though. The forecaster continues. In addition, 12 to 24 hours after the event, the radiation particles could reach the territory of Poland. These are Warsaw, Zamość, Lublin, Kozenczyn, Politsky, Salidsky, I don't even know, Ostroleka, Mila, Toron, Ozan, Kozalin. Holy crap, these words are ridiculous for English. That is and when you've never read them or said them before, that is the whole southeastern part of central and northern Poland and further tangentially to northern Germany. It is worth noting that usually the winds blow just the opposite direction from the west to the east. From the west to the east, yeah. But at the moment the air masses turned the opposite direction. Okay.
Radiation appears only at the moment of ammunition's explosion. However, the danger is posed by depleted uranium nanoparticles, which can be sprayed tens of kilometers from the site of the explosion. From 5 to 7 years after the nuclear incident, damage begins to affect the most sensitive tissues in human bodies and animals, the reproductive organs and the spinal cord.
So now I'm just going to flash back. Again, everybody needs to learn about the nuclear testing at Bikini Atoll, the Bikini Islands. And you know a bikini as women wear bikinis. And I got to classify that, right? And that's where the name came from, was the Bikini Islands, where the nuclear testing consisted of detonating 24 nuclear weapons by the United States between 1946 and 1958 on Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands. The tests occurred at 7 test sites on the reef itself, on the sea, in the air, and underwater. The test weapons produced a combined fission yield of 42.2 megatons of TNT in explosive power, and contaminated everywhere around there within, obviously, square miles of 100 square miles in circles. All the islands are screwed, guys. They murdered everybody around there, not giving them information. The U.S. is absolutely terrorist. They just, if you watch it, it's just so sad and so amazing. The U.S. is the terrorist of the world, where they can, like I just said, 24 nuclear bombs next to your hometown as a Bikini Islander, and they tell you it's okay to continue living there, and then everyone dies. And they watch, and they even picked up people and brought them back to the U.S. and put them in a container that measures the radiation on them, and then send them back to the island, guys. And eventually, the people on the island actually asked for help. Was it from Greenpeace? Showed up with a ship and loaded everyone who was left alive and took them off the island, evacuated them. And while the U.S., nope, it's fine, just watched them and filmed them and tested them. They were guinea pigs. It just makes me so angry. The U.S. guy is the ultimate terrorist of the world. Irnieracing News. Actually, one last note. So the test of Bikini Island was 1,000 times more powerful than either of the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima or Nagasaki during World War II. The scientists and military authorities were shocked by the size of the explosion, and many of the instruments that had been put in place to evaluate the effectiveness of the weapon were destroyed. Other measuring devices all around. Authorities had promised the Bikini residents that they would be able to return home after the nuclear test. A majority of the island's families had agreed to leave the island, and most of the residents were moved to Irnieracing Atoll and later to Kili Islands. Both, so look, I'm reading Wikipedia, and it looks like it's absolutely, if you watch the documentaries, like the one I just said, The Coming War of China, they show the people on the island asking for help and everything, and how they were told to go back there. So this is just, Wikipedia, guy, is absolute woke propaganda. It's fucking propaganda. They were told, yeah. Oh, here you have it. So the U.S. paid more than $300 million in various trust funds to compensate the islanders and their descendants. A 2016 investigation found radiation levels in Bikini Atoll as high as 639 MREMYR, well above the established standard safety for habitation. That's not true, though, guys. They told them to return to the island, and they continued to monitor and watch them, how they would react and how they would die.
I'm suspected that my illness is a consequence of the NATO bombing. And when I came to Belgrade, the doctors confirmed it to me that the bombing was the main cause of my illness and that it was a consequence of the bombing. In particular, the depleted uranium ammunition that they used to attack us here is the main reason why cancer appears in people. It is not clear to us what it is that affects the body, but the doctor explained to me that these are the consequences that appear after a certain number of years. They told me that I'm young, healthy and strong, and that's why I did not feel anything at the beginning. Later, the body subsides and a lot has accumulated in the body. Our environment in which we live is polluted. I generally tolerate the therapy with difficulty. The therapy itself is difficult and lasts quite a long time. As for my mental and physical condition, I'm very exhausted. I don't move much because I can't move because of the therapy. When I'm in the hospital, the therapy starts at 9 in the morning and ends at 8 in the evening. It's 10 hours of lying down a day, and it all depends on how well I tolerate the cycle. In the second cycle, I endure heavy therapy. I had a high temperature and I fell into a coma. It's a temperature coma, but the doctors helped me, and they told me that it must be so difficult because the therapy itself is difficult and the disease has spread. Cancer has affected the lungs, lymph glands and the main aorta.